Ever heard of Typhoon Alley? Sounds kind of ominous, doesn't it?
It does, doesn't it? Definitely not a place you'd want to get caught in.
Not unless you're really into extreme weather, which, luckily for all of us, we are.
That's right. So today we're diving headfirst into Typhoon Alley. This notorious stretch of the Western Pacific is like a hurricane factory. Except, well, it turns out typhoons.
And to fully appreciate just how wild these storms are, we gotta break down the basics. So what exactly is a typhoon? Is it just a hurricane with a cooler name?
You're not far off. It's basically the same thing as hurricane, just with a different name based on where it forms. Think of it like
Wow.
same storm, different address.
Location, 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 right. But what makes a typhoon a typhoon? How do we know it's not just a regular old thunderstorm with some extra oomph?
It's all about wind speed, my friend. The Japan Meteorological Agency, or JMA, has a whole classification system. Picture this. You've got this swirling mass of clouds and wind, right? Below 33 knots. It's just a tropical depression. Not too scary.
Yeah, just a breezy day at the beach.
Right. But crank up those winds to 34 knots or more, and boom, you've got yourself a tropical storm. And that's when they slap a name on it.
So it's got to earn its name.
Exactly. But hold on tight, because things escalate quickly from there. At 48 knots, we're talking a severe tropical storm. And once those winds hit a powerful 64 knots,
Ooh, that's getting serious.
dead serious, that's when the JMA officially calls it a typhoon.
64 knots, that's like trying to fly a kite in a wind tunnel.
It's intense. And just to add another layer, some regions, like Hong Kong, get even more specific. 80 knots. They call that a severe typhoon. And if those winds howl at 100 knots or more,
Hold on to your hats.
you're looking at a super typhoon.
A super typhoon. So we're talking next level power here. Now, I gotta know, why Typhoon Alley? What makes this particular region such a breeding ground for these mega storms?
It's a perfect storm, so to speak, of a few key factors. Number one, warm ocean water. Typhoons feed off that heat energy like it's nobody's business.
Warm water check. What else is brewing in Typhoon Alley?
Enter the monsoon trough. It's this belt of low pressure that tends to hang out over the Western Pacific, especially during the summer and fall. Think of it like...
Like a comfy hammock for typhoons to form in.
Exactly. The monsoon trough provides the perfect atmospheric conditions for typhoons to spin up and flex their muscles. And here's where things get extra interesting, especially if you're used to hurricane seasons. Typhoon formation here. Not nearly as predictable.
Wait, what? You mean there's no designated typhoon season?
You got it. While they're most frequent between June and November, kind of like hurricane season in other parts of the world,
So there is a peak time.
there is. But a typhoon can actually show up any month of the year.
Talk about keeping you on your toes. So no rest for the weary in Typhoon Alley, which makes me think about those typhoon names. They're not your average weather system names, are they?
Not at all. It's not like your typical hurricane names. No Bobs or Susans here.
Thank goodness we've got enough Bobs and Susans running around already.
Right. But with typhoons, we're talking animals, flowers, even astrological signs. They get pretty creative.
Wow, so it's like a nature documentary meets your horoscope. Who gets to pick these names, though?
It's actually a team effort. 18 different countries and regions in the Western Pacific, they all chip in and come up with names.
That's so cool. So they're all working together on this.
Yeah, they've got this list they go through, kind of like taking turns. Each country gets to put their own spin on it.
I love that. So what happens when they get to the end of the list? Do they just start all over again from the top?
You know it. It's a cycle of typhoon names. Although there are some names that get retired.
Oh, like a typhoon retirement party. What would that even look like?
Maybe a bunch of meteorologists sitting around reminiscing about the good old days of...
Intense wind speeds and torrential downpours.
Exactly. But seriously, names are usually retired after a particularly nasty typhoon. You know, one that causes a lot of damage.
Ah, so it's kind of a way to acknowledge the impact, right? To remember those really devastating storms.
Precisely. It's a way to honor the events and the impact they had. Speaking of memorable typhoons, ready for some historical trivia?
Oh, yeah. Hit me with your best typhoon facts.
All right. First up, trivia time. What year saw the most active typhoon season on record?
Most active. With all the talk about climate change, I guess sometime recent, right?
That's a good guess, but the answer might surprise you. It was actually 1964. They had a whopping 39 typhoons that year.
1964, that's wild. Definitely not what I was expecting. Talk about a busy year for typhoons.
It was. Now, how about another one? Which typhoon holds the record for the lowest pressure ever recorded?
Okay, low pressure means a stronger storm, right? I remember reading about Typhoon Tip. Was that the one?
Ding, ding, ding. You got it. Typhoon Tip, back in '79, reached an insanely low pressure of 870 hectopascals.
870. That's unbelievably low. No wonder it's a record holder. But on a more serious note, what about the deadliest typhoon of the 20th century?
That tragic title goes to Typhoon Nina.
Typhoon Nina.
Back in 1975, it slammed into China and caused devastating floods. We're talking almost 100,000 lives lost.
Oh, wow, that's heartbreaking. It's easy to focus on the wind speeds, but the flooding from these storms, that's a whole other level of devastation.
Absolutely. And speaking of rainfall, let's talk about Typhoon Morakot from 2009. You remember that one?
Morakot? Vaguely. Refresh my memory, what made it stand out?
This typhoon absolutely drenched Taiwan. They got hit with an insane amount of rain, like over 2,000 millimeters in some places.
Wait, seriously, 2,000 millimeters, that's... How many inches is that?
Over 91 inches. More rain than some places see in years.
That's insane. It's like the sky just opened up and refused to close.
It was relentless. Typhoon Morakot is officially the wettest typhoon ever recorded in the Northwest Pacific.
Wow. That's a lot of rain. 91 inches of rain. It's hard to even wrap your head around that much water.
It really puts things in perspective, doesn't it? Mother Nature playing a very intense game of water balloon toss.
No kidding. This whole deep dive has been fascinating. The wind speeds, the naming conventions, these historical examples, it's clear that typhoons are nothing to mess with. But how does this all connect back to us, in everyday life? What can we actually do with this knowledge?
Well, for starters, understanding how these storms work is crucial for predicting their paths and their potential impact. That's huge for communities in vulnerable areas.
So being prepared, right? Knowing when to evacuate, understanding the dangers of storm surge and flooding.
Exactly. It's about being proactive, not just reactive. Knowing the ins and outs of typhoon formation, how they're classified, just how powerful they can be, that empowers people to make safer decisions.
And maybe appreciate the forces of nature a little bit more, too.
Absolutely. There's a healthy dose of respect that comes with understanding these storms.
Speaking of respect, I gotta ask, with all the talk about climate change, could Typhoon Alley actually shift? Could we see these megastorms forming in different places in the future?
It's a question scientists are definitely grappling with. Warmer ocean temperatures, changes in weather patterns, these things can definitely influence how and where typhoons form.
So it's all connected, right? What happens in one part of the world can really have a ripple effect.
Exactly. And the more we learn about these powerful storms, the more we understand about our planet's delicate climate balance.
Well, it seems like our deep dive into Typhoon Alley has only scratched the surface of a much bigger conversation.
There's always more to explore. That's what makes it all so fascinating.
Couldn't agree more. So until our next deep dive, keep those brains buzzing and never stop exploring the world around you.